Hi, this is Marty Schupak, and I want to welcome you to T-Ball America. And this is our free virtual T-Ball clinic. And again, we're doing this because a lot of us are kind of quarantined with this horrific coronavirus. And please follow all the laws and rules that your local government has put in effect as far as this virus. And we're going to whip it. It's just going to be a little bit of time, but we're going to take care of it. Hey, here's a concept you might want to think about for young kids. How about when the team does something good, you reward them and have them run? Now, this is a little bit different than when you and me were brought up playing on our high school teams, when you did something wrong and the coach made us run. I'm kind of turning this around, making a negative into a positive. And why not reward the kids with a run when they do something good? Let's call it a victory lap around the field. We might be doing some long-term good with our youth of America if we start putting in different concepts like this and making running a positive. Okay, this module is on catching and fielding. And listen, like every skill in T-ball, you have to separate the players and utilize your assistant coaches. You can never have too many assistant coaches. If you have use of the whole field, please use the whole field. All right? Just like when there are baseball bats lying around and kids see them, what's the first thing they do? They pick them up and they start swinging them. All right? And this is really not good. It's not safe. They do the same thing when they see a bucket of balls. They'll pick them up and they'll start tossing it and start throwing it. Please, make sure they're spaced apart. Make sure you give them good supervision, and make sure you have a lot of volunteers. As far as catching, when we separate skills, I'm talking about not putting like catching and throwing together. So if you're teaching throwing, you don't have them catch. And if you're teaching them to catch a ball, you don't have them throw. This is especially important when the kids are very young. You could combine the skills, and if you want to combine them like the end of the first week or the second week of practice or the third week, you can do it. But my advice is for the young T-ball players, try to separate skills so they're going to focus on your instruction at hand. And if you're teaching them throwing, that's what they're focusing on. Okay, now I mentioned this too, that some kids can catch the ball, but they don't know where to throw it. All right? Keep in mind, even though these kids may have played catch with the father, they still don't know the concepts of the baseball field itself and where to throw the ball once it's hit to them. And that's our job to do. Our job is to make them familiar and turning it into an instinct as to where to throw the ball. Players, they miss the ball fielding because they take their eye off it. The old adage, keep your eye on the ball, is very true in fielding. And a perfect example is, and this happens with all levels, from T-ball up to Major League Baseball. I'll give you a perfect example. In the 6-4-3 double play, shortstop to second to first base, when the ball is hit to the shortstop, a lot of times I've seen it, the best players at the last second, because they're trying to focus on getting to, they're lifting their head up, and what happens before the ball goes into the glove? It goes right under the glove, and instead of getting 2 out, they get no out. And I'm jumping ahead like 5-6 years. If some of you people are going to coach in the upper levels, when you have a player on first base and there's a force, you want to teach your shortstop, his only job is to get the out at second base. Once he focuses on that, the team has a better chance of turning a double play. All right, back to T-ball. Players, like I said, miss the ball because they take their eyes off it. As far as gloves, keep in mind in T-ball, This is the first sport for a lot of people, and a lot of the parents that never played sports, they're not sure of what to do and what type of equipment to buy. I'll give you an example. I live in an area 27 miles north of New York where a lot of the parents are single mothers, they're of Haitian descent, and they sign their kids up for T-ball. And the first day of practice, these kids come to practice with what I call a pancake glove. And what I mean by that is it's like as flat as a ping pong racket, which makes it almost impossible to catch a baseball. And what happens is the mothers or even the parents will go to the big box stores and they'll go to the sporting goods section. They'll see a sign, official T-ball glove. Now, as far as I know, there's really no official T-ball glove that's considered official in the world. These gloves that these parents are buying are produced by the millions, in China or somewhere else. And we really have to educate these parents or these moms and dads, first year parents in youth sports, really what is the right glove to purchase. Okay, so that's it as far as the equipment. Now, as far as the drills, if you scroll down, the first drill I show is the knockdown fielding drill. The beauty of this drill is that it's what I call a low skill drill where it doesn't take a lot for the players to be really successful in it. And what they're doing is with their glove hand, with or without the glove, and I'll get into that in a second. I prefer without a glove. You're throwing objects. It could be wiffle balls, it could be beanbags, it could be rolled up socks, and what they have to do is kind of knock it down so it doesn't get past them. We have other drills, which I'll point out later, another drill where they're moving the feet. In this particular drill, they're almost in the same spot. They are allowed to move their feet, and what they're doing is they're knocking down the object with their hand. If they have the glove on, they're knocking it down with their glove. This is a kind of eye-hand contact. It's a great at-home drill. And listen, I've used, you have to be creative, or I want you to be creative when you're a youth baseball coach or youth sports coach. Don't just count on books to read up on stuff. I like to challenge you to be creative. Try to create like one creative drill a week for your own child or for your team. I'll give you an example. A number of years ago, what I started using in T-ball was rolled up newspaper. I would roll up, and I found that if you rolled up 2, it's better than 1. It has a little more weight. But if you use rolled up newspaper, as far as fielding or even hitting, and when I say fielding, I mean a drill like this, like knocking it down, it's a non-threatening item. So the kids don't mind, and they're not flinching. They know they cannot get hurt with rolled up newspaper. Now, of course, if you roll it up, you'll see that if you get beyond like 6, 7, 8, or even 10 feet, it's really not that useful. It has to be done in close. But that's a creative thing that I thought of a few years ago, and I've used it over and over again. All right, so that's the knockdown fielding drill, which is the first drill. And I just want to read what it says before we close out on that. In this drill, it is basically an eye-hand contact drill. You can start this drill without gloves, then put the glove on the player. He has to knock the objects down from the air as they are thrown to him. We want to use non-threatening objects so the player is not afraid of getting hurt. Coaches or parents can use hacky sacks, bean bags, or plastic golf balls. I have used rolled up newspapers in this drill. Just what I said. Right here, I just want to stop for a second, and I just want to kind of tell you my theory about, I really believe in T-ball, we should do drills and even play games the first quarter or third of the season without gloves. I think that's the best thing in the world, not to use gloves. And what we're doing without gloves is we're forcing the players to move their feet. Now, of course, you only want to do this if the ball is soft enough where a player is not going to get hurt. if you do find a ball or if it's approved by a league, again, I highly recommend the first quarter or third of the season, the players play without gloves. Then, of course, you have them use their gloves. But I like that idea. All right, the second drill I have is the color code fielding drill. And what I did here is, and it's actually taken from a different book, T-ball skills and drills. I take some soft covered T-ball balls and I color code them. And in this drill, I used what is known as painter's tape, where you could go to the Home Depot or you go to Lowe's, you go to the painting section, and they have different colored tape. It's called painter's tape. I took pieces off and I put it on balls, I put it in a box, and then I start throwing ground balls. And what the player has to do, he's got to focus on the ball, and when he recognizes the color, he's got to yell out the color and watch the ball go into his glove. This is highly effective getting the player to keep his eye on the ball. Besides painter's tape, I've gone to like Staples or Office Depot, and I've used these colored circles that they sell. I've used yellow, I've used green, I've used red, I've used blue. So you could do this drill. I do this drill with older players. In fact, there's a great drill. It's called a tracking drill. When a player is batting, he stands at the plate and he doesn't swing, but as the ball passes him, he has to yell out the color and he watches the ball go into the catcher's glove. Very effective drill for keeping a batter having his eye on the ball. And it's a way to really train the eye to focus on the ball. All right, so the color code drill is another drill that we do in T-ball. And here's another drill that I call the plastic bag reaction drill. And the thing with this drill is that we don't have a lot of plastic bags anymore. They're becoming obsolete. Okay, but what I did was this. I did it with my daughter. I took a plastic bag and I held it up. She was in front of me, and I dropped it, and she'd have to catch it. This is a great at-home drill. If the player is very young, it's a great introduction. You could do it on the field. I would do it in one drill, or I would separate the team with the younger players and the older players, do it with the younger players, and you could make this a progression drill too. You could have players, after they catch the ball, after you drop it, they could clap and then they catch the ball, or they could turn around and as soon as you drop it, you'll go. They have to turn face you and catch the dropping plastic bag. Again, be creative. Just because it's not a ball hitting a bat or a ball going into a glove doesn't mean that it can't be an effective drill. We want to stimulate and engage the players. The more creative drills we do, the better practices we have, the more fun they'll have, and the better chance we have that they'll not only come back to the next practice, they'll come back next year to play baseball or softball. Okay, the next drill I have, now this drill I use, some coaches frown upon it. It's what's called the scratch paddle. It was very popular a number of years ago, but I still like doing it with players that are very reluctant to get under a fly ball, and they're very nervous about the ball hitting them. If you remember what the scratch is, it's, hold it up, it's a Velcro ball, and it automatically attaches to a Velcro paddle, and the player puts his hand in it, and you throw pop-ups and he catches it. Now what this is doing, really, is you want to build up the confidence in the player, because a lot of players on a fly ball, they are very nervous. But if they have the scratch paddle, again, the Velcro ball is very non-threatening, and they learn how to catch it with that. I think it's an ideal, effective method of teaching them. All right, so that's one drill. Here's another drill. This might sound a little ridiculous, but sometimes the simplest drills, the most ridiculous drills are effective. It's called the hit in the head drill. You have the players always wear helmets, and you try to use a Nerf ball or maybe like another soft type of ball, some sort of cushion ball. Franklin used to put them out where it was a cushion ball, and you take a racquetball racket and you hit it up in the air. The player has to track the ball, and what the goal is, at the last second, the player has to look forward, and the ball's got to hit him either on the head, remember he's wearing a helmet, or on the shoulders. Now remember, we're using something that's not threatening. If you have to use a pair of rolled up socks, use a pair of rolled up socks. The player has to be convinced that he's not going to get hurt. What this drill is doing is it's giving him repetitions of getting under a ball, and it's going to hit him. Now you could make it into a game like 2 points if it hits him in the helmet, 1 point if it hits him in any other part of the body. What we're doing is we're using what I call the progression method. We're building up to having the player catch the ball in his glove. So that's another drill. Moving on, and I mentioned this before, this drill is the goalie drill. And this is a drill that was very, very popular with my 10, 11, and 12-year-old kids. What I'm doing is that I'm teaching young kids, again, I'm adamant about having kids move their feet because I find a lot of times when kids get older, they're not moving their feet like they should, and they're depending upon the glove to do the job. In this drill, what we're doing is I'm putting 2 cones apart. I have a player backing up, and I'm throwing ground balls in between the cones, and the player doesn't have to catch the ball. He just has to stop it, keep it from going behind him. It's a highly effective drill to get players to move their feet, get them used to watching the ball, keeping their eye on the ball. And it's very, very effective to get them to become good fielders. Before I close out this section or module on catching and fielding, I just want to talk about what I call the progression method, and I'll mention another drill. When my oldest son first began in T-ball, the first drill that the players did, the coach told them to get a partner, and as they stood apart, he told them to have a catch. To me, this was the worst thing you could possibly do, and I witnessed it because 2 of the players, and at the time they weren't using soft-covered balls, they got hit in the head, and they started crying. One player didn't want to come back to the baseball or softball field again. So I think sometimes we have to build up to a certain skill. And one of the things I do in the progression method is we start here, we perfect it, then we keep moving up to the level or the skill that we want to do. And I'll give you an example. There's a drill, and it's in most of my books, it's called the lead drill, where the team lines up in a straight line, and the coach with a bucket of balls will lead them and throw them, and the player has to put the glove out and catch the ball as they're running. What I did was when I had a 9 and 10-year-old team, I knew this drill might have been tough for some first-year players, so I told the whole team, I don't want you to catch the ball. I want you to just make contact with the ball with your glove. Even the really good players, I didn't want them to catch the ball. A lot of times you want to keep it uniform so everyone's doing the same skill. So we had them do this. All they would do was making contact with the ball as the ball was thrown in front of them. And what this was doing, it was making the goal achievable because the player is not stationary, he's running, and we're lessening the goal of catching the ball. All he's got to do is make contact with it. So you want to try to follow what Marty Schupak calls the progression method. Some of the resources for this section, and I just want to tell you, they're all listed following this T-ball clinic. But on catching and fielding, you might want to take a look at fielding drills and techniques, infield team drills and strategies, backyard baseball drills. Those are all videos. Another video is T-ball skills and drills. Again, these are free on Amazon Prime. And again, I'll talk about this at the end of the last module. I've gone out of my way trying to make all my resources free, whether it's a book or whether it's a video. So I'm going to wrap it up now. For Marty Schupak and T-Ball America, thanks for tuning in, and keep an eye out for our next module, which should be on hitting.